for the writing of the history. So the original material and sources give a much of better under the history subject. So the original sources, original evidences are the building of that history. So
Sir,
these
page number, sir.
sources mainly, Nana,
Page number, sir.
page number. Page number 25, Nana.
26, sir.
Okay, sir.
Sir, 26, sir.
25 to 26, 27. So, okay.
Sources of history. Okay.
Sources of history. So, the sources are two types. One is archaeological sources.
Okay.
The second one is literary sources. So, these sources were the archaeological sources were called as primary sources. Primary sources. So, the archaeological sources were the better evidence to write the history. So, they are original sources for the writing of construction of history. In that archaeological sources, those are in that archaeological sources are divided into four parts. Those are monuments or archaeological remains. Monuments are archaeological remains. So the second one is inscriptions. The third one is coins. The fourth one is pottery. So through these evidences, the history will be constructed. Those who are the historian construct that history or writing that history through the examples of these evidences, and to the archaeological sources. The first of all, the monuments. The people past civilizations, those who are constructed and left that monuments are original evidences to the writing of the history. Those like the people, those who are left the civilization, the Indian ancient civilization is the Indus Valley civilization. So the in that Indus Valley civilization, and afterwards the what is that Vedic civilization and later Vedic civilization. So these civilizations are constructed some monuments. That type of monuments are evidences for the history. So the how to make that history through the monuments. So the how to identify that monuments. Until the 1784, the William Jones, who was established that Asiatic Society of Bengal at 1st January 1784.
1784.
1784, the William Jones was intended to excavate the past civilizations through that, and Sir Alexander Cunningham, one of the royal engineer and the general. He is habitually wandering about the excavations. He entered into India in 1831 and he was interested on archaeology. So he was excavated the Indian archaeological sites. So the archaeological remains he excavated until 1862. So when he was retired, he continued when he was retired 1885. So 1862 to 1885, he was excavated so many sites. So Alexander Cunningham was the father of the Indian archaeology. Why? Because of he firstly he excavated so many sites. So and at the time of Lord Curzon, who was the Viceroy of India at 1901, so he established the Archaeological Survey of India as a department. So in the department, he was appointed as a post archaeological surveyor as a Cunningham, and afterwards, Sir John Marshall, who was the main excavator of the Indus Valley civilization at 1922. So he was also provoked the so many excavations in his behalf of in his excavations. So many sites at the basin of Indus Valley and in the basin of Indus River and its tributaries. So many sites are excavated, approximately 250 to 500 almost of. So these excavations are enlightened, explored some monuments like at the time of Indus Valley civilization, so many sites are excavated, just like Harappan civilization and Mohenjo-daro civilization and the town planning and the Great Bath. So, like this, so many constructions are excavated through the Archaeological Survey of India during the directorship of Sir John Marshall. Sir John Marshall. So, when the after the Sir John Marshall, in his disciples who are the Dayaram Sahani and R.D. Banerjee
తెలుగులోనే
and
చెప్పండి.
Sankalia, and these people also excavated so many sites at the basin of Indus Valley River. So approximately from the 1921 to 1931, so many sites are excavated. R.D. Banerjee found that the Mohenjo-daro and Sindhu region, he excavated so many towns and tools. So the tools were very much useful to very much evidences, better evidence to the construction of the history of Indus people and that history of early Indian civilization. So primarily the archaeologists are concerned discovering the material of the relating to the early man before the script, so which is not readable. So the excavations are so many towns were excavated like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Lothal, Gangapur, Kalibangan, and so many sites, Astinapur. So Ahichatram and Koshambi, Kosala. So just like the Varanasi treated as that Kasi, so many towns were excavated during the Sir John Marshall's directorship. In that excavations, so many tools were excavated. So many tools were excavated. So that excavations, that monuments which are built up by the Indus people, those are all the best evidence to the construction of history. So regarding that construction of history, these evidence through the evidences we have to know the civilizations and the so many types of history, just like the political history and the economic history and the social history and religious history of the Indus Valley people. So the Indus Valley people were what they are engineered or they constructed the good township. That's why that civilization was called as the urban civilization. The Indus Valley civilization was called as urban civilization. Why? Because of the cities were constructed as a square or a rectangular mode. So that geometrical measurements are established in the houses and roads and the buildings and the every house have the bathrooms and the under drainage system. It is the very good advanced engineering system in those days. That is under drainage system. So these regarding these tools, regarding these monuments were constructed that Indus Valley civilization, which is enlightened by the archaeological survey of India and the directorship of Sir John Marshall. Afterwards, also until now, it is continued as they are digging and dug so many sites. So afterwards, the ancient civilizations were also excavated by the archaeologists, just like Robert Bruce Foote. So, who was the best archaeologist of India? So, he was also excavated so many sites. The ancient sites also excavated at the time of primitive man. So, the Adamgar or Bhimbetka, Brahmagiri, Pikli Hall, and Elephanta caves. So, just like this, so many sites were excavated and enlightened through the archaeologists or archaeological survey of India. So, what the excavations are given the information to the history, the all the tools and all the constructions were given the very good valuable information for the construction of history, for the writing of history. So this is the much of useful the archaeological remains. So afterwards, after the time of Indus Valley civilization, the Vedic civilization, at the time of Vedic civilization, so many towns were excavated in the North Indian and the Gangetic basin. So in that Ganga Valley, so many towns just like Kosala and Pataliputram and Magadha and Rajagriha, so many towns were excavated at the time of the archaeological survey of India, and at the part of southern part of India also so many sites just like Nagarjuna Konda, Amaravati. These sites also be excavated by the archaeologists, those who are interested to the construction of history. These sites were given the much better information for the construction of history. So those were the monuments, the constructions, the archaeological remains were given the information about the civilization of that certain area, time of people, certain period of people, and they what their culture. The culture was enlightened by that through the monuments, and the economic status also indicate that excavations and that town plannings. So afterwards, the at the time of the Mauryan period and the Gupta's period, and at the time of very good sculpture was enlightened by the historian at the first century, as like as the Gandhara art and architecture. The sculpture also enlightened by the historians. So through that monuments, through that sculpture, so many better information was given by the tools of during the time of Kanishka's rule and Harshavardhana's rule and Gupta's rule. So from the kingdom, ancient kingdom to modern kingdoms, so much of valuable information given by the constructions or monuments or archaeological remains. So next we are going to the source, another source, that is the inscriptions. The inscriptions was the study of inscriptions is called as epigraphy. So this epigraphy was used for the reading of inscriptions. The inscriptions were they are given the much of information. So the information is utilizing the kings and queens and so many inscriptions were they are laid the foundation for their kingdoms, and they are enlightened their state, and some people were laid the inscriptions for the commemoration of their beloved gods, or the commemoration of their beloved rulers. So many are laid that inscriptions. So many inscriptions are according to the Robert Bruce Foot, so many inscriptions are available for the construction of history in India. So Robert Bruce Foot was excavated and explored the so many inscriptions of Mauryan Empire. So the Ashokan pillar inscriptions were he read and he explored that. So behalf of that explorations, behalf of that Maurya Ashoka's inscriptions, given the much of information about his kingdom and socio-economic conditions of Mauryas, and after the post-Mauryas, information also given by the inscriptions. So at the time of Ashokan inscriptions, so mainly explored about the religious conditions of the Mauryan Empire. So, who was the Ashoka was sent his ambassadors to the South Asian countries and East Asian countries as the religious concept. So he scattered throughout the world about the Buddhism. So that according to the Robert Bruce Foot inscriptions, so what he was explored, that information given to the much of to the construction of history, and it is explored the Mauryans history. Afterwards, it was the Allahabad Prashasti, the inscription. It is also be enlightened the reign of or administration of Gupta's period. The specifically the rule of the golden age of the Gupta's age. It is enlightened by the Allahabad Prashasti. So afterwards, the Bharsikera and Madhuban, these inscriptions also given the much of information about the Pushyabhuti dynasty, which was belongs to the Harshavardhana, and at the time of South Indian inscriptions also, just like Aihole inscription or the Nasik inscription, Nanagat inscription about the Shatavahanas, Gautami Putra Shatakarni's mother, Gautami Balasri, laid the inscription as the Nasik and Nanagat inscriptions, and at the time of Karavelas of Kalinga, he is also laid the inscription, Hathigumpa inscription. So these inscriptions are given the much better information, the primary information given by that inscriptions. That inscriptions are estimated that ruling of those conditions, the contemporary situations, it is recorded through the inscriptions. So afterwards, the inscriptions afterwards at the time of the post medieval period, medieval period, so many are laid by the Kakatiyas and as well as the Chalukyas and Cholas and those who are the Badami Chalukyas in northern part of India also laid so many inscriptions laid by the Rajput clans, and before that the so many Gupta period, so many inscriptions are laid for the construction. These inscriptions, the so many thousands of lakhs of inscriptions are excavated by the historians. So that inscriptions are also primary source for the construction of history. So some inscriptions are given the information about the dynasties. Some inscriptions are given about the religious conditions of the dynasty or state or kingdom, and some of the inscriptions are given the information about the socio-religious conditions and cultural conditions given by the inscriptions. So these type of these much of inscriptions given the information about the source of they are much useful to the construction of history. So the history constructed by through the monuments one time at a time, monuments as well as the inscriptions. So monuments are given the information about the status of the kings and kingdoms. So and the capital cities of the certain dynasties. So these inscriptions are given the information about the kingdom and the status of the people and the conditions of the socio, religious, and economic conditions are given explored by these inscriptions. So next we are going to the coinage. Coinage. So the study of coinage is called as numismatics. The study of coinage called as numismatics. So the coins also very good sources of for the construction of history. So many historians are appreciate about that kind sources of coins. Why? Because of the coins were given the accuracy of the chronology or chronicle orders. So these coins were given the show the economic status of the kings and kingdoms and the people. So the coins made of gold, silver, and copper. Made gold and silver and copper. So these kinds are given the information about states, given the information about the wealth of the people and the status of the administrators or rulers. So, so many administrators are released the gold coins and silver coins and copper coins. So we are estimate the as a historian, we are estimated about that coins when the
Sir,
were released the
sir,
gold coins. Then we are expected
sir,
that age is the golden age. That kingdom was very rich kingdom.
Sir.
So we are expected about that. Depends on the coins. So
sir,
tell me now.
make everyone mute, sir. It's disturbing.
Make
Sir, disturbance, sir.
Getting disturbance, make everyone mute, sir.
so everyone can mute. Anybody can unmute. Uh, those who are unmuted,
Okay.
please mute your voice. Please mute your voice. Okay, Nana.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. The now the kinds which were we are as a historian we are expecting about the status of the economic status of the kingdoms or people or kings. So then the kings were released that gold coins and we are expecting about that kingdom was a very good economic position or rich kingdom. We are treated as rich kingdom. So when they are released the copper coins, then we are expecting about that kingdom was very poor kingdom. So just like that, we are expecting through the coins, and we are measured with the sources, just like monuments, inscriptions, and coins. We are examined the three types of the sources. Then we are expecting about the kingdom and the socio-economic conditions of the people and the religious conditions of the people. But here the kinds were very good sources for the chronology. If you are taken the any kind, the kind belongs to from the beginning of the beginning of the time and the ending of the time of the kingdom. Please can you unmute?
ఒకసారి నేను ఇంట్లో తీసుకొచ్చి చాలా
Ramesh, unmute.
సార్ వినిపించలేదు సార్.
బతకాల్సిన కారణం పట్టలేదు.
Nagoor, Ramesh.
సార్ మీ దగ్గర ఆప్షన్ ఉంటది, మీరు మ్యూట్ చేయండి సార్.
Okay.
Please mute everyone, sir.
ఓకే సార్, ప్లీజ్ కంటిన్యూ.
So kinds also two types. The kinds were the in general kinds and punch marked kinds and so punch marked coins and Indo-Greek coins and Roman type of coins are divided for availability of construction of the history. So these coins were given the very good information about the economic position and chronological order of the king and kingdoms and the chronology supported to the construction of history. So the punch-marked coins, the meaning of punch-marked coins represents this private coinage. The coins were punched by the making made by the guild. So the goldsmiths were made that coins with the permission of rulers. So the goldsmiths are made that coins that made of gold or silver. They are symbolically the commemoration of their beloved gods or beloved goddesses or beloved the forefathers. They are beloved the animals too. So the Panchamarka coins, the symbolically, when the Gupta period, the goddess of Lakshmi marked on the coins. So the at the time of Samudragupta period, so they are marked with the lions, and some kinds are marked with the gods. At the time of Indo-Greeks, they are marked with the Alexanders and Philips. So likely these punch marked was so they are commemoration of their beloved one. They are released that kinds. So these kinds also given the much of information for the construction of history. So the kinds are the earliest kinds of India, and they are we are only the symbol of their victories and their kingdoms. So each symbol punched separately, which sometimes overlap and another. So they do not bear the inscriptions, a legend on them, legend on them. So the legends are, if they are expected, if they are beloved that gods or goddesses or their forefathers, so they are punch marked. So afterwards, the uh, trade and commerce, with the foreign countries during the ancient period to medieval period. So this is also given the information by the coins, the Roman coins and Indo-Greek coins at the time of Kushanas and at the time of Kanishkas, the migrations are came from the Middle Asia to India. So that is enlightened, explored by the these kinds. So these kinds also given the information about that particular kingdoms and particular time and particular economic position, particular economic status of the people. So the kinds are released by the so many kings and kingdoms. So in southern part of India also, from the beginning of Shatavahanas to the ending of the regional dynasties, when the in Telangana the Nizam also released so many inscriptions, so many coins they are released with the gold, silver, copper made of the type of metals. So now we are going to the pottery. Now we are going to the pottery. So the excavations, the pottery also be the cultural explorations were explored by the potteries. The potteries were enlightened. So what, Teja? What happens? So the explorations and the explored the so many types of cultures. The cultures also explored by these potteries. The at the time of Indus Valley civilizations too, the recently the modern period also made up with the clay. The clay was blackware and redware, and the painted grayware also made of these pottery tools. The pottery tools also given the information about the cultures and the economic and cultural position of the people. So these are so many are excavated in from the beginning of the Indus Valley to the pre-Indus Valley also be excavated at the time of the Stone Ages too. The potteries are best evidence before the scriptural knowledge. So we are divided into the history is divided into three parts: before the script and after the script and the middle of the script. Before the script is prehistoric period. The middle of the script is the proto-historic period. The after the founded find out that script when the script was came from that scriptural period called as the historic period. So before the scriptural period or the prehistoric period, uh, when there is no script, then the historians were expected the history through the archaeological tools or those are these type of archaeological tools which were monuments, inscriptions, and coins as well as the potteries. So these are the main primary sources of the history. So next we are going to the another sources. Next we are going to that literary sources. So literary sources were divided into two parts. So the literary sources after the historic period. So the prehistoric, proto-historic periods are there is no script. That's why there is no literary sources. So when the script was find out, so founded, then that is called as the historic period. The historic period was recorded so many records, so many books and novels and so many scriptural materials. So these scriptural materials, behalf of these scriptural materials, the literary sources were divided into two types. That is one is the native literature, and the second one is the foreign literature. So the foreign literature is divided into three types. That is those who are came into India. The early period was the Europeans. Those were Greeks. So the Greek literary sources and the secondary who came from China. They are the Chinese sources, and the thirdly those who came to India, that is the Europeans. So the Greek, China, and the European literature explain about the source of the for the construction of history. So the native also divided into two types. One is religious, another one is secular. So the religious accounts were the different types of religious accounts is there, and the secular accounts also so many secular accounts are there. So the Firstly, we are discussing about the foreign text, which were at the time of Greek text. The early texts were Greek texts. That is Anabasis of Alexander, who came to invaded India at the time of before the Christ. So at the time of 3rd century. So the Strabo and Ptolemy. So these Seleucus Nicator and Megasthenes. So these Greek ambassadors are given the much of information in Greek languages and Greek literature. And afterwards, those who came from China, so Huanshan, Fahian, Yuanshan, Itzing. So these travelers were given the information about the contemporary situations of the India. They are recorded through their diaries. So these are the foreign texts, and the Europeans. So many Europeans are came, and so many Arabs were came. So the Islamic literature given at the time of medieval period, very valuable information given by the Amir Khusro and Ibn Battuta and Barani, Firadausi. So many are there. So this type of Islamic literature also, given that the foreign texts were given the information, and as well as those who are the traveler like Europeans, Marco Polo, Niccolo Conti, Nikitin, Abdul Razak. So many are came to India. So they are also given the valuable information about the India, the contemporary situations, contemporary conditions of India. They are given the much better the information for the construction of Indian history, for the writing of Indian history. They are given the valuable informations. So, and the native information also given the divided into two parts. The two parts were the literary and that secular information. So the literary sources were the religious sources were divided into those who are the ancient literature. The ancient literature was written in Pali and Prakrit and Brahmi and Kharoshthi scripts. Pali and Brahmi, Kharoshthi, Prakrit scripts were they are used that previously. So the native the religious texts were first we are taking that Hindu texts. The Hindu texts were divided into so many parts, just like the Vedas and Vedangas and Puranas. So and the Upanishads. So these texts were given the valuable information about during the latter Vedic period and as well as the latter Vedic period, and the Buddhist texts also given the information about the particular time of 6th century BC at the time of Gautama Buddha. So the particular Buddhist texts were the Tripitakas and Tripitakas, Angas, as well as the Deepavamsha, Mahavamsha, and the epic literature also given that information about the construction of history. So the mainly the Buddhist literature concentrated on the religious concept. So the Buddhists were they are provoked, they are served to the education. So they are laid the foundation for education in India. So they are established so many university, international and international universities like Nalanda and Nagarjuna. So these schools are established by the Buddhists. So then the Buddhist literature also be enlightened for the Indian to the Indian history. So the Indian history was the contribution of Buddhist literature for the Indian history in a very rich position. Afterwards, the contemporary literature, religious literature was Jainist literature. So the Jainist literature, the Jains also given the information. So they are also given the Angas and the Kalpasutras and the epics and the cultures of Jainist uh, priests or Jainist Tirthankaras. So these are the given the information about the religious texts were given the information to the Indian construction of Indian history. And the so many the another one is the secular. The secular texts also given the information about the construction of history. The secular, which type of a secular, just like the Kautilya's at the time of Kautilya's Mauryan Empire, Kautilya given by the information about the construction of Indian history through his Artha Shastra. So when he was given the information afterwards, so we are that text is very good, given the very good information about the king and the kingdoms and the rules and regulations of the king's administration and the position of the Mauryan people and the cultures of the Mauryan people, the social structure of the Mauryan people. So this type of information explored by the Kautilya's Arthashastra, and afterwards, so so many the second century and third century, fourth century basis, so many texts were given the information about the scientific method. So those scientific method was Varahamihira and given the information, and Aryabhattiyam and Leelavati, the mathematics, and the southern region Gada Saptasati, which was written by Hala Chakravarti. So the emperor of Hala. So he was also being a poet. He wrote that text Gada Saptasati and Gunadya's Bruhat Katha. So these texts were secular texts are giving the much of information about the construction of Indian history. Secondly, the Kalhanas Rajatarangini, it is the first historical text in India. First historical text in India was Kalhanas Rajatarangini, and the Patanjali's Mahabhashya, the grammar text of Patanjali, and the Kamandaka's Niti Sara, the moral values of the Indian people, the Kamandaka's Niti Sara also given the much of information, and the Jayadeva's Gita Govindam, the Jayadeva's Gita Govindam also given the valuable information about the Kashmir people and the religions which was enlightened by the Vaishnava sect. So the Gita Govindam also given the very good information about the Indian history, and so many like that. So many texts were given the information. So the afterwards, at the time of the Gupta's period, so many technology was invented. So that technology was the Surya Siddhanta, which was the Surya Siddhanta. According to the Ptolemy's, it is a clash with the Ptolemy's theory, and so many mathematics texts were also given the information, and the Colonel Todd also recorded so many types of stories about the Rajput clans. So many stories of the Rajput clans also given the information, And at the time of Harshavardhana, also Bhana Bhattu or Bhana also written so many texts, just like Harsha Charitra and Naganandam, Nritya Ratnavali. So these texts also given the much more information about the Indian history. And so many texts like in southern part of India, Gunadya's Bruhat Katha and Gal Saptasati and Lilavati Janitam, and at the time of Kakatiyas, Pratapa Rudra Yasho Bhushanam, also given the information about the ruling of the Kakatiyan kingdom. And Jayapa Senani also given write the story of Nritya Ratnamalika. So it is also given the information about the Kakatiya's kingdom. At the time of the Kannada and Telugu region mixed ruling at the time of Vijayanagara period, so many texts were given the information. At the time of 7th century or 4th century to 7th century AD, when the Guptas were ruled at the time of second Chandragupta, the poets, bunch of poets were called as the Navaratnas in the court of second Chandragupta during the Gupta's reign, Gupta's administration. So just like same as like that, the southern part of India at the time of Vijayanagara period, also the Astadhiggajas at the time of Sri Krishna Devaraya and second Devaraya. So these Astadhiggajas also wrote the so many texts, so many secular texts. They are given the information about their administration. At the time of Vijayanagara Empire's administration, this information also given by the so many texts. And the Rajatarangini, Kalhana's Rajatarangini also given the very good information about the historical view. In historical perspective, he is given the information. And afterwards, the Kamandaka Niti Shastra and Vatsayana Kama Sutras, these texts also influenced the society through the ages. Yeah, these texts were influenced through the ages. So they are also given the much more information about the Indian history. And the Muslim texts also, just like what I am saying that what I said, that Islamic literature, just like Ibn Battuta and Amir Khusro and Firdausi. So these people also, Al Biruni also given the very good valuable information about the Tariq-e-Hind. Tariq-e-Hind. The text was given the information about the conquests of Arabs. The conquests of Arabs. That text was given the information, and Ibn Battuta also given the information about the Indian history. So afterwards, Nizamuddin Hussaini, and at the time of medieval period, at the time of Mughals period, also given we have the rich literature at the time of medieval Mughals period. So Hamid Lahari, as a historian at the court of Shah Jahan. So these are all given the very good information about the Indian history through this literature. So we are constructing the history through the primary sources was those people who are directly using their metals, or those who are using the tools. The tools were original evidences to the construction of history. So the secondary source was the text. The texts were sometimes are truth, sometimes are false. Sometimes they are given the information accurately. Sometimes they are obediently right. They are exaggerations about the kings and queens. So Vikramarjuniyam or Aryabhattiyam. So these type of Aryabhattiyam is one of the original text, but the Vikramanka Deva Charitra or Prithviraj Chand Bharatbhai Prithviraj Raso, these type of texts were exaggerate that kings and queens. So the originality is different. The exaggerations is different. That's why we are believed about that literary sources were just examined about through the compared with the archaeological sources. So we are conclude here the archaeological sources were primary sources for the construction of history. Original sources, those who people are directly used that tools. So they are the original or primary sources. So the literary sources were the secondary sources. They are after the examine by the historian. Then after we are constructing that history. So this is the sources of the history. So archaeological sources, literary sources. The archaeological sources were monuments or archaeological remains and inscriptions, coins, potteries. The literary sources were different in two ways. One is the native, the another one is foreign. So the native was religious and secular. So in that religious texts, Buddhist, Jainist, and Hindu texts were is there, and the seculars was biographies, histories, epics, as well as the governmental orders and records and handbooks or journals. So these are the secular. And the Hindu texts, the Vedas, Vedangas, Puranas, and the Upanishads and Dharma Sutras. So the foreign texts were the Chinese, Greece, Chinese, European, and Arab texts. So these are the archaeological and literary sources for the construction of Indian history. Okay, if you have any doubt. So our time is also over. So okay. Thank you, Nana. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
హలో సార్ లేడు వెళ్ళిపోయిండు.
ఎవరైనా రన్నింగ్ నోట్స్ రాసారా ఫస్ట్ నుంచి లాస్ట్ వరకు? రాయలేదు.
అందరు వాట్సాప్ గ్రూప్ క్రియేట్ చేయండి అబ్బా.
అవునవును, ఒకరు క్రియేట్ చేస్తే అందరికి వస్తుంది.
కిరణ్ నాయక్ అని ఉన్నాడు చూడు, అతను క్రియేట్ చేస్తాడు.
ఆల్రెడీ
పంపించాను నేను కూడా నంబర్ చూడండి.